A frail woman became pregnant 81 times in a single year. But each time, her husband cruelly forced her to abort the child. Her husband would throw a funeral celebration to mark the occasion. It wasn't until the 82nd time that he finally allowed his wife to carry the child to term. But what no one could have expected was that the woman gave birth to a hideously grotesque creature. Everyone around recoiled in terror and stumbled backward. Yet her husband showed not the slightest trace of fear, and instead cheerfully stood his ground to shield the child. The man then fitted the creature with a specially crafted mask, and the child began crawling around on all fours like a dog, though the dog king had only 3 legs. He moved with surprising speed and agility. When thirsty, he would leap up and snatch a dragonfly out of the air. When hungry, he would fight the dogs for scraps of raw food. And gradually, the dog king adapted to this way of life. However, one accidental glimpse through a window would completely change the course of his life forever. It turned out his father, wanting to pass down his martial arts, had begun teaching his 2 younger brothers a ceremonial dance. But their natural talent for dance was absolutely terrible. A single simple move practiced 1,000 times and they still couldn't get it right. Yet the dog king had only watched once, and already picked it up with remarkable precision. He even used his own natural gift to create movements that were far more graceful and beautiful. Though fate had cursed him with the body of a monster, at least it had not buried his extraordinary talent for dance. From that day on, the dog king developed a deep passion for dancing. And so he began practicing day and night without rest. Because not only did it give him a sense of joy he had never felt before, but deep down he also held on to the hope that, if his dancing became good enough, maybe he could finally earn his father's approval. Yet perhaps all of this was nothing more than a beautiful dream. But when he had mastered the dance to a transcendent level, something miraculous happened. He had somehow grown 2 new human-like legs. The dog king was overjoyed and danced with wild excitement. And so he immediately ran back to the village, wanting to share his joy with everyone around him. He had believed that now that he had grown human legs, people would finally stop looking down on him, but as he passed by a private schoolhouse, he caught the same cold, piercing stares from the children inside. And that look filled his heart with a deep and bitter resentment. If people were never going to accept him no matter what, then there was no point in hiding himself any longer. So he reached up and tore the mask right off his face, revealing his true appearance to everyone around him. At the sight of it, the villagers screamed and scattered in all directions. But the dog king laughed and leapt into the air with delight. And at night he would even stretch out his 5-meter-long arms to snatch weapons from villagers passing by, and whenever anyone dared to show anger toward him, the dog king would simply remove his mask and scare them so badly they'd wet themselves on the spot. He figured this trick would never get old, but one day he ran into a most unusual stranger. And the dog king once again pulled off his mask. Yet when faced with his hideous appearance, the stranger didn't flinch or run away at all, but instead stared at him with a completely blank expression. It turned out the man was blind. And on top of that, he was a skilled pipa musician. As the man's fingers moved ceaselessly across the strings of the pipa, the dog king found himself involuntarily swaying to the rhythm.